All righty. Well, I would like to welcome Ollie to our group meeting tonight. Ollie is a 15-year-old climate activist from East Hampton through the Climate Action Now group. And she's going to tell us a bit about climate change and what we can do and how that ties into some gender equality type stuff. So Ollie, take it away. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you, Dana. Hello, everyone. My name is Ollie. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm a leading member of Climate Action Now's first ever youth-led working group, also known as YCAN, which stands for Youth Climate Action Now. Thank you so much for inviting me today. I'm so excited and honored and happy to be here to talk about climate intersectionality and direct action. And this is such an inspiring group of incredible women, and I really appreciate I really appreciate and admire your commitment to learning more about intersectionality and climate activism. So I'm going to be covering a lot of different topics throughout tonight's workshop, including more about YCAN and our main mission and the many issues that intersect with and overlap with the fight against the climate crisis. So basically, what I'm going to be doing today is giving you all sort of an update on where we are at right now in the climate activism world and the many topics that we are prioritizing. And this is going to be a very interactive workshop. I'm going to start out with a presentation, and then we're going to go into sort of a conversation aspect. So there's going to be plenty of opportunity to ask questions, and I'm going to be sharing plenty of upcoming actions to get involved with our work in the future as well. And I want to start by talking a little bit about YCAN and how we got started and what has brought us here to be with your group here today. So I think I forgot to do this at the beginning, but I'm going to start my screen share. All right, and bear with me while I get it up. Okay, everyone can see that okay?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, great, all right. So YCAN is still a fairly new group. We technically officially launched on New Year's of this year, and the little blurb that I always like to share that kind of summarizes everything that we are about is that we are a Western Mass-based, movement-driven group with roots in nonviolent direct action, climate education, and leadership training. So collectively, YCAN's long-term goal in this process is to establish monthly webinars that consist of 2 consecutive meetings. The first is going to be an educational endeavor into a specific, relevant topic in the evolving conversation around climate change and environmental justice. And then the second day is going to be devoted to taking direct action in each of our communities to combat that specific issue. And we recognize that that's a pretty big goal to set for a group that's just starting out. And we see that, but I really believe in the creativity and determination and passion of my peers and fellow activists. And I really think that together we are going to be able to make a direct impact in our communities, no matter how big of a goal we set. So some examples of topics we plan to focus on in the future for these webinars could be renewable energy, environmental justice, sustainable agriculture, the importance of mental health awareness in youth activists, creative climate action and how we can incorporate art into these efforts, pipeline resistance work, and even addressing youth's role in government and state legislation. And of course, this doesn't even begin to scratch the surface of the many issues we are committed to helping address, but it kind of gives us a place to start to get to know the group better. But I think that the most important part of YCAN's mission is that we are an entirely youth-led group with a central mission to empower other young people to lead the next steps in the fight against the climate crisis. So the main mission of this group is actually really simple, and that's to provide a space for young people to be loud, a space for young people to use our unique voices to spark change, a space for young people to let others know that we are angry with our leaders' response to this crisis, and we're angry that there are still so many people out there who are not listening to us, and we are demanding direct action. And this is a space for us to just make a ruckus and disrupt the system, and of course feel safe and accepted while doing so. So this means that all of our efforts are organized by young people, hosted by young people, and designed specifically for other young people. So we are fueled by the power and importance of youth voices. And our most general age range right now is probably high school age, but we are also committed to helping to get younger middle school age students involved as well in direct action. And we also have plenty of college age members as well. And so because this youth-led aspect is such an important part of our work, I want to talk a little bit more about that. So we all know that youth-led activism is an essential aspect of any social movement. We've seen it, we've heard it, we've experienced it, but I think it's also important to talk about why it's so important and what specifically do young people bring to the table and why it's so essential to carve out a space to hear the voices of youth activists in this movement. So to talk about why this is important, I'm going to tell a little bit of a story, so bear with me. So I grew up on my family's farm. We are a community-supported agriculture vegetable farm in East Hampton. And for my whole life, I have seen the effects of climate change firsthand. From monumental, record-breaking droughts to extreme rainfall, in the last few years, the effects of climate change have simply been more and more impactful and visible for us. And for a while, I think that my family saw these changes and these extremes as simply the daily struggle of managing risk and managing unpredictability as farmers. But it has become increasingly clear over the last 2 years specifically that climate change is having an undeniable direct impact in Western Massachusetts. So, inspired by the effects that I've been experiencing, I have been involved with climate activism since I was about 11 years old through several other different organizations and different groups. And so when talking about, when people ask me what age I first got involved, I usually say I joined the fight when I was in middle school, but in reality, I've been involved in this conversation for my whole life. For my entire generation, I don't think there was ever really a time when we weren't thinking about this crisis and we weren't worried about our future and the future of generations to come. And so when talking about the importance of youth-led activism, I usually use my favorite example. And it's just this lasting image that has really stuck with me over the years, and one that I believe really honestly represents what YCAM is all about and why youth-led activism is so important. So I was about 8 years old when we watched in 2015 this group of 21 youth activists sue the US government for violating their constitutional rights of life, liberty, and property by not addressing the climate crisis head on. And leading this movement was the incredible youth climate activist. He is an Indigenous rights activist, a young pop artist, and founding member of the organization Earth Guardians. At the time of this event, he was about 16 years old. He's about 21 years old now. His name is Shotes Martinez. And at the beginning of his career, he made a statement at the United Nations General Assembly on climate change, where he stood up in front of all of these great world leaders and asked a very simple question. He talked about how this is really a turning point for our nation and for our society, and I can't imagine how overwhelmed he must have been feeling in that moment and how terrified that must have been for him. But he set aside his fears and he chose to be brave because he believes in a livable future and he cares about our beautiful planet. And he told the leaders present at this conference that they had a choice to make. And he asked them, as a young climate activist, how they would like to be remembered, as the people who took direct action in this time of crisis to implement these much needed solutions, or as the ones who favored their own personal agendas over others. Do they want to be remembered as the ones who destroyed our world or as the ones who saved it? And I really think that this simple question perfectly represents why youth-led activism is so important. This is a perspective that we are bringing to the table as people who have grown up in this time of crisis. And we are giving a new meaning to the saying, no one is too small to make a difference. And I am so proud of the progress that we have made so far. And I'm so proud of the fact that we will keep working and keep fighting and keep dedicating a part of ourselves and a piece of our lives to this fight. So as young people, I think that we are often taught to see our youngness as an obstacle to overcome almost in the process of getting involved in direct action. and activism in general. And I think that once we start to see our youth as a unique tool to enact change and to inspire others, that is when we are going to be able to make real progress toward a livable future. And that is something that is just constantly inspiring me, and it just completely fuels the model of youth climate action now. So I'm going to move on now to another central topic of YCAN's main mission, and that can be found in creative climate action. So we're going to be completing all of these big goals that we've set using art and creativity in every step of the way. So central to our work from the very beginning has always been this theme of creative climate action. We believe that art has always been used as a form of rebellion and a tool to inspire resistance. And so from poetry and writing to visual arts and sculpting to photography to music, we believe that art has a beautiful way of connecting our community and of inspiring social change, which is exactly what we're trying to do. So as creative young people, we plan to utilize art in all of our work to make our message more impactful and to reach a broader audience. So some examples of creative climate action that come to mind right now that I've personally been a part of action with the American Rectory Theatre in Cambridge called Wild, a Musical Becoming. And this was a musical about a group of young activists taking a voice in their local community and their local government to save their small agricultural town from the effects of climate change. And I was just really inspired by the artists that were involved in putting this together and how they were using this unique platform of music and theater to draw attention to these issues. There were actually some pretty big names involved with this production. The lead singer was Idina Menzel, who acted as the voice of Elsa in both of Disney's Frozen movies. The play was written by V, formerly known as Eve Ensler, and the music was done by Justin Tranter and Carolyn Pinnell, who write music for Justin Bieber and Selena Gomez. So we were very honored to be a part of that process and just really inspired by the work that these artists were doing to recognize creativity as a climate change solution. A more local climate action that also comes to mind was Mass Audubon's Western Mass Regional Youth Climate Summit last year. So I was a part of organizing an in-person summit for local high school students at Arcadia Wildlife Sanctuary to hear more about how different forms of art can be used in climate action. So how we sort of structured this event was that we had a panel of local artists from Western Massachusetts join us to present on how they are using their chosen art form in their activist lives as well. So a major theme throughout the summit was to keep climate action accessible and our projects unique to the youth experience. We found that creativity is an essential aspect of youth-led activism and yet another important new perspective that young people bring to the table. And then an upcoming community-led action in Western Mass that follows this theme of creative climate action is the This Is Not a Drill Poetry Vigil. And this event is going to take place in late March, or probably really realistically at this point, early April, in partnership with Northampton High School's Environmental Club and the Pioneer Valley Performing Arts High School Sustainability Club. YCAN is organizing this event around works from a panel of local youth poets, including 2 of Northampton's Youth Poet Laureates. It's going to be a very fun, celebratory night of climate and nature poetry with a goal to raise money for both schools' environmental clubs to fund future projects. And if anyone is interested in getting involved and attending this event, please feel free to go ahead and put your email in the chat and I'll get in touch with some more information soon. I'm really looking forward to this event. I think it's going to be great. I'm super inspired by the work of both schools' sustainability clubs and just really looking forward to it. But I'm going to move on to our next stage of the presentation. The last thing I want to talk to you all about before we move on to the more interactive part of today's workshop is climate change intersectionality. And this is one of YCAN's main focuses, and I think the topic that applies most to this incredible group. So just as a show of hands, how many members here have heard of the term climate intersectionality and know a little bit about what it means and what it stands for? Okay, well, so for those who don't know, I'm going to start by talking a little bit about the details and I'm going to start by talking about the definition before we get into the details. So a civil rights professor and a civil rights advocate and law professor named Kimberly Crenshaw first coined the term intersectionality, and I believe it was 1989, to draw attention to systems of oppression that overlap or intersect to create unique social issues that are far too often overlooked by the greater society. And more recently, that the climate action movement has taken up this term and this mission and started applying it to the demographics of how climate change impacts people. And this intersectional narrative continues to encourage us not only to take a more inclusive, bigger picture, macro level view of the climate crisis and the people being affected by it, but it also acknowledges that every individual has their own unique experience of these issues and their own relationship to the impacts. So now we're going to be talking about some examples of climate injustices, and we're going to be taking both a big picture societal look at these systems, and we're also going to be talking about our own relationship to these issues and how they play out in our individual lives. So in a big part of our mission, and I think the mission of most climate groups, is that we emphasize the fact that the climate crisis is going to affect everyone and everything. And this is undeniably true. We all know that. This is something that we hear every day in the media, and even more if we are part of an action group in our communities. However, aside of this same story that we hear less often in the media, is how the environmental and health consequences of climate change do not affect everyone equally. This crisis is disproportionately impacting marginalized communities. And these marginalized communities include members of the LGBTQ plus community who are statistically at a higher risk of being displaced by climate change disasters, neighborhoods of lower socioeconomic status who are far too often placed closer to coal-fired power plants or incinerators and are exposed to higher levels of harmful toxic emissions that can cause health difficulties later on in life. Other abled individuals who face stronger societal and political barriers in accessing resources to recover from climate change disasters. Communities of color are disproportionately impacted by the health consequences of climate change as well, especially Black, Latino, and Indigenous peoples. And of course, women are also on the front lines of these impacts. So according to the IUCN Global Gender Office, 80% of all people displaced by climate change are women. That's 80%, 4/5 of the displaced population are women. And I think, so yeah, that's just a crazy statistics, and I just wanna let it sink in for a second. I think that it's also important to recognize and name the fact that we have to be intersectional in our efforts to encourage this intersectional narrative and mindset. So to clarify, by women, I mean all women, including Indigenous women, disabled women, Asian women, queer women, straight women, Black women, old women, young women, and trans women. So some people may still be asking, why is this such a monumental difference in who is being affected most? And this is another area that I want to make sure I cover, and another clarification that I think is really important to be made. The answer to that question is that this issue is going to affect the population in the same way every other issue affects us. So the most marginalized groups have the fewest resources and the fewest opportunities to protect themselves against rising sea levels, rapidly increasing global temperatures, and extreme weather damage, and are therefore going to be on the front lines of these extremes. The marginalized communities who are already at the highest risk are going to be the first to face the consequences of these detrimental, globally harmful practices. And the craziest part, to me at least, is that statistically speaking, these marginalized communities are also the ones who are contributing the least to global warming, simply because, again, they have the least resources to continue the cycle of damage. Mm-hmm. So the fight for environmental justice works to draw attention to this gap. I like to think of it as the applied version of the intersectional climate mindset and narrative. And so climate justice works to ensure that everyone affected by this crisis has every basic human right, including not only access to clean water, clean air, power, and shelter, but also a leading central voice in this fight and evolving conversation. So how one of my first climate activism mentors explained this concept to me was that environmental justice means advocating for not only the protection of our planet, but also for all of our people. So this essentially means that the fight against the climate crisis doesn't just mean combating climate change. It also means fighting for social justice, because this is first and foremost a human rights issue. So there we go. Oh, you can all see the slides changing, right?
Uh-huh.
Okay, great, just making sure. So what can we do to make this social movement more intersectional? How can you advocate for the protection of our planet and all of our people? One way is that you can help to provide a platform for other members of your community, your friends, your family, your coworkers, and your neighbors to share their story of intersectionality, and to recognize that everyone's experience is unique. You can make sure that the historical timeline of the fight against the climate crisis that is being presented to you shows each and every perspective, including the narratives from BIPOC communities that have been previously silenced or whitewashed. One way to do this is to learn more about the diverse group of scientists, politicians, and activists who played a monumental role in helping us get to the place that we are at now in the fight against the climate crisis, but who are still not necessarily recognized for their incredible work. You can also support other intersectional climate movements in your community, such as Earth Guardians, Youth versus Apocalypse, and Extinction Rebellion, that are leading the way in a wave of inclusive action. Another solution can be found in asset framing. So asset framing is a term coined by Travian Shorters, one of the world's leading social entrepreneurs. You've probably heard of him. He is an author and a teacher and an activist and just such an inspiring individual. And he came up with this narrative model called asset framing that defines people not by the challenges that they have faced or by the obstacles they've had to overcome in their lives, but rather by their aspirations and their assets. So, excuse me. So the perfect example of this is how women are not just victims of climate change, but we are also an essential part of the solution. We are leading the way and inspiring social change. And I think that it's important to recognize and appreciate this in each of our lives. Travian Shorter's model is also something that I really encourage everyone to research and learn more about. I think it's something that we can each learn from in our lives. We don't have the time to get into the details of this incredible model of asset framing today, but it's something that I've been learning more and more about recently. And the more I learn about it, the more I think, why has it taken us this long to reach this turning point? Because that is really what asset framing is. It's a turning point for our society and a turning point in the conversation of intersectionality. So definitely go check that out. The final point here on this slide is you can make sure that you are encouraging more intersectional conversations as a regular part of your daily lives. We can encourage conversations in our communities about both our individual privilege and our personal climate impacts. So before we move on to the interactive half of today's workshop, I want to give everyone the chance to share any thoughts that come to mind right now about everything I just covered. Does anyone have any questions or ideas or general points that they would like to make? I want to just give you all the floor for a minute to share where your mind is at if you're comfortable. And feel free to take a second and think about it. It's a lot to take in. It doesn't matter if these are things that you've spent your whole life thinking about and discussing, or if this is the first time you've heard of climate intersectionality. This is a big topic, regardless. So take your time.
Ollie, I just wanted to say a couple of things. I've been attending the Commission on the Status of Women, which just started yesterday, and it's taking place in New York City virtually. And there's over something like 7,000 people involved all over the world
Wow.
at this conference. It's amazing. And one of the main visions of this event is working on specific things that we can do about climate change. So this really ties in so well. And one of the first things that was talked about when the event opened yesterday, is that we want joyful disruption. So it kind of ties right in with what you were saying. And they also have, the CSW has a youth group that's very active over the next couple of weeks. And I'd love to send you some information on that.
Yeah, that'd be wonderful. I love the phrase joyful disruption. Is
Yep.
that what you said?
We're here.
Yeah, that's
joyful.
like,
we want to disrupt, but we're going to do it joyfully.
exactly. Yeah, I love that. I think I'll start using that actually. I feel like yeah, that's exactly what we're going for. Oh, and please, yeah, share the information about the youth group with us too. We are always looking for partnerships. So
We'll do.
thank you. Does anyone else have any thoughts or questions or ideas they want to bring up? And feel free to just shout it out. I can't see everyone's screen, so I won't be able to see if you raised your hand.
I'm sorry, I'm having trouble unmuting here. Can you hear me? Yeah,
Yes,
I'm
we
just
can.
very impressed with the link with art. I think it's a real point that will help with your success a great deal and really draw young people in, a very diverse group of young people. So I'm excited to see that.
Yes, we are too. I think art should be recognized more in the activism world as a tool to inspire people, because that's essentially what it does. All right, so we're going to move on now because I want to make sure I don't run out of time, but there will be a second chance to share later on, and you can always feel free to go ahead and type something in the chat as well if something comes to mind. So I'm going to move on now to the final part of our workshop today, which is the interactive part. And I'm going to stop screen sharing for now, because we're going to split up into breakout rooms. Let me just rearrange my screen here. Okay, so the first breakout room that we're going to break up into is going to be focused on discussing how to identify your role in this topic. So there are going to be a series of rapid breakout rooms, and the question is to recognize your relationship to the discussion of intersectionality. And to start, I can share a little bit of my own experience as an example. So as a white teenager living in Western Massachusetts, I feel a strong sense of responsibility to find and identify the ways that I benefit from my privilege. So going into this intersectionality workshop, when Climate Action Now asked me if I would be interested in doing it, I had a few hesitations and reservations about if I was the right person to do this presentation for some obvious reasons. So I want to clarify that as an anti-racism ally and a feminist, I'm sharing my personal perspective in order to start this larger conversation that we're going to jump into soon in our breakout rooms. So ultimately, my own personal goal to take away from this workshop is to recognize my privilege and hear from the perspectives of others in my community. So one of the most important ways I'm hoping to do this moving forward is to start to live with an intersectional mind and apply this narrative to every aspect of my daily life. This will help me continue to understand just how much these issues are connected and how I benefit from systems of oppression and how I can help provide a platform for others to share their experience through Youth Climate Action Now. And that is exactly what we're going to be doing in this breakout room. So I want you to try to continue to think intersectionally as we move forward. So questions you can ask yourself: are you a member of a marginalized community? Are you in a position of privilege or power in relation to these issues? Are you a member of these groups? Are you directly impacted by these issues? Do you work with people who are directly impacted by these issues? And what can you do about it? I really think that it's important to be open about this and to see these issues paralleled in our own lives, as well as just the statistics. So I want everyone in your breakout rooms to just go around and speak for about a minute or so on your relationship to environmental injustices in your community. And Mary, is it possible to make those breakout rooms for about 2 people?
Oh, gee.
Mary, you're muted.
So I think we need 9 breakout rooms.
Perfect.
Okay.
Oh.
How much time do we need, Holly?
I think about 2 or 3 minutes.
Okay.
They shouldn't go too long. Maybe let's say 3 minutes, and we'll change it if we
Very
need to.
good. Hello. Can you hear me?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Well, hi, Vicki.
Is it just us?
I think it's just us. Yeah, she wanted us to break it down to just 2 people each.
Okay.
Oh my God. Yes, I'm part of the privileged. I'm
Yeah, me
I'm part
too.
of the power. I have power and I'm clueless.
Well, I I have power to it. You're right about being clueless in a way. Now, I just bought a new car and I really thought about buying an electric car, but Dave and I didn't do that because the infrastructure is not there for, traveling. Where are you going to charge it? I have no idea. So I think this is a country issue, is that there's not enough infrastructure to support these cars. Another thing I heard, which I thought was a little interesting, is that all of these, how we want to be made in America, a
Yep.
lot of the parts that are being made for the electric cars are not being made here. They're being made in China or someplace else. So, and then they have to go to a landfill as well. It's when they die, all these batteries and like, what's going to happen to them? So when you're thinking about what can I do, I'm not sure. It sounds good to buy an electric car. Everything sounds wonderful, but it's probably going to be just as expensive for the country and for the climate to buy an electric car. So what's the purpose?
I just don't know.
I don't know either.
I don't know. I was at one of the meetings today with the Girl Scouts at the CSW. They're involved in planting trees because they found that they're working with an organization called American Forests, and they said that they have to plant trees in urban areas in order to make a difference in those areas because there aren't enough trees, and that will improve public health and promote social equity. I never even thought about that.
I knew that trees would improve our air quality.
Yeah, that's one of this, and it absorbs carbon dioxide.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've got to go. Need something? You're muted.
I am the only one in my room.
Oh, okay.
You sent me to my room by myself.
All by yourself. Are you feeling privileged? I'm gonna end it anyway.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Recording in progress.
Hopefully everybody will find their way back.
Bye-bye.
Okay.
Are we back for everybody?
I think we're back.
Yep, I think so.
All right. Okay. Yeah. So I think that's everyone. We're going to move on to our second breakout room, and it's going to be a conversation where you're going to name 2 climate solutions that you could incorporate into your everyday life. The first is going to be something that you can easily apply, such as cutting single-use plastics or eating local or carpooling. And the second is going to be something that will take a little bit more work to change, such as getting solar panels or going vegan or riding your bike to work or school for a month, or even joining a local climate action group in your community. And if you have time, you can also start talking about some of the possible barriers you might face in incorporating these challenges. And again, try to take an intersectional perspective of how you would go about making your life more sustainable. So again, that's one climate impact that would be easy to change and one that's going to take a little bit more work and experimenting to implement. And Mary, do you think it's possible to have the breakout rooms change so we're with different people and everyone continues to talk to the whole group?
I think I can do recreate,
Okay.
assign automatically, and there are 18 people, so there should be 9.
Oh,
Let's try it.
Perfect.
Okay, try that. Okay. If anybody's alone, let me know and I will come and get you.
Thank you, Mary.
throw us a rope.
Okay. Hello. Hi, Liz. Hi, Patty.
Oh, I was the first one sitting there alone, right? And I'm like, how do I get out and ask her for help?
Well, I'm pretty new at this too. So
Oh,
what do you have? Do you have some ideas on solutions, what you want to do?
Wow, they're all good, actually. I mean, the recycling, with the price of gas, people are going to be riding their bikes to work.
Mhm.
But
Yep.
it's tough. We were just talking. I was talking with another lady. What's her name? Hart. Her last name's Hart.
Oh, Liz.
Yeah, Liz. Very nice. And like we said, we don't know of any groups in our area that are doing any of this. And we didn't see too many hands go up when she asked if we had heard about it.
Mm-hmm.
But we were shocked that it was someone brought this up in 1989 but further shocked that 80% of women are impacted by this.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. There's cleanup. There are people that go and do the cleanup along the riverbeds, and get the plastics out of the oceans and everything. But I don't know anymore. I don't know what more we could do in this particular town that we're in. I mean, do you have ideas?
I'm really clueless. I'm learning a lot more now, and I realize how much more I should know, and I'm determined that I'm going to learn more. As I look at my grandchildren and your grandchildren and
Yeah.
what they have to offer, if we don't do something,
Right.
and everything counts.
Mhm.
whether it's planting trees, picking up garbage, educating each other.
Right.
We just need to learn more and
Right.
find, some concrete things that we can do. So,
That was one of the things we were talking about, is that it's probably not going to impact us as much as it's great that the young people are doing it, because it's going to be their lives, their children, our grandchildren, like you just said.
yeah,
And
you're right. And I believe that they are the driving force right now.
right. You're
The
right.
Commission on the Status of Women has a huge group of young people that are
Mhm.
involved, thousands of young people. And it's
Awesome.
just, it's so impactful, when you hear them talk about their passion and how, they're making a difference, and we're determined we're going to make a difference.
Yeah.
So you kind of have to look around you and find some way that that you can move something forward. But
Mhm.
education is number one.
Right.
So,
Right.
yeah.
Well, that was my question. Is it educators that are getting them on board, or, or is it government senators or congressmen, or who's getting these young people on board? Who's behind them?
From what I'm hearing is organizations who can mentor, that
Mhm.
like the national, the American Forest Organization. Never heard
Yeah.
of them before,
Yeah.
but they're
I
working
haven't
with
either.
Girl Scouts all over the world,
Nice.
to share,
Yep.
to tell them, not to tell them, but to share with them, the
Mhm.
impact that, trees have, and, what we can do about it. Now, that's
Right.
just one small piece, but,
Mhm.
it's people who can mentor others,
Right.
and educate us. So,
Well, it's funny that you bring that up, because Mike and I caught on to a show that's actually, it's like in Texas, where it's game wardens, and there's one in New Hampshire, and that's the same. They said a big part of what they do too is to educate, and it's the same type of things that, get these young people understanding how
yeah,
important it is to not throw your trash on the side of the road,
right,
and
right.
care about, well, if you're fishing and your fish are too small, they're not going to breed, and it's a
Yep,
whole ecosystem. It was really fascinating. So you're
yep,
right.
it really is.
She's a wonderful speaker for
Isn't she
someone so
great for
young.
15 years old?
My granddaughter's 15 and she's not
I
there.
know.
I'm like, what did
Yes.
we do wrong?
Okay, I'm learning a lot.
Me too.
I think we're going to be heading out in about 2 seconds. So
Okay.
thank you.
Yeah, thank you. If I end up by myself again.
Wow.
All right, I think, is everybody back?
Mhm.
Okay. So our last breakout room question is, this is the last one, I promise. It's a question of how you can help lead the way. So now that we've discussed each of our impacts and our relationship to intersectionality, we want to also talk about what we are going to do moving forward and how we are going to change to make our communities more sustainable and our societal systems more inclusive. So an important part of joining the fight against the climate crisis is to identify what you bring to the table and what your role could be. I kind of think of it as step 2 in joining after you've recognized that there is a problem that we need to be working to fix. So it's important to recognize is that we each have an incredible, unique, powerful voice, and that we can use that voice, that we actually have to use that voice if we want a livable future. So to do this, we have to think about what skills we might have that are essential to this conversation. So you could be a really passionate community organizer, or maybe you're an artist who can use your art form to creatively and inclusively draw attention to the changing climate. Maybe you're an educator in the position to bring climate science or direct action into your curriculums and to your students. Maybe you are a Western Mass citizen who gets inspired by local climate actions in your community and decides to make time in your schedule to show up to events and add your voice to the collective ruckus. Or as Mary said, the joyful disruption. That was it, right?
Yes.
Yes. Okay. So, or maybe you're a driven young person who understands that this is our future and the future of our beautiful planet that is at stake and that we need to be taking direct, immediate action to save it. So again, the main goal of this breakout room is to name 1 or 2 skills you have to bring to the table or an essential role you can play in this social movement. And yeah, I think we can mix up the breakout rooms again. It's going to be the last one, so I want to make sure everyone gets a chance to talk to as many different people as possible.
Okay, let's see what we can do.
Perfect. Thank you, Mary.
You betcha. Hello.
Hi, Mary.
I think there's one person stranded. I'm just trying to find her. Okay, Chris Shirtclough. Okay, so I want her to join. I'm going to disappear in a moment, but I'll be. There's one other person that has one person, so I'm just trying to figure out how to get the 3 of us together. So if you just bear with me. So join 7. I don't know how to do it. I'm sorry. So, do you have any ideas?
Well, I laugh because, you know, she talks about leadership roles, and I've led enough stuff in my life. I have no
Yep.
desire to lead anything else ever again, but that experience, I certainly would be happy to share with young people and in almost like a coaching role. And I also teach workshops on a process called visioning. Most people know
Oh,
about.
yeah, I want to know more about that.
Yeah, people know about vision boards, but this is a little different. It's a little deeper, and it's a combination of meditation, collage creation, or working with images, and writing, a lot of journaling, creative journaling. And I've used it in planning processes with people. Sometimes I just use it with individuals who are, you know, looking to identify skills and things like that. So it has a wide application. I mean, I've done things with seniors about their health. I've done things with young people about creativity. And so I haven't done a lot of it. I actually offer an Airbnb experience for it, but of course I closed it during COVID. So I'm a little rusty, but getting back in.
I'd like you to consider thinking about doing a short overview,
Okay.
you know, for members, you know,
Think about it.
would that be something you'd be interested in?
Probably not soon, but I would do it sometime.
Okay, think about that. Yeah, you know, I think it's a very valuable skill.
That's why I was excited about the art piece.
Yeah, exactly.
It's true.
Yeah.
I think it's and there's always that you learn such wonderful things about people too when you do. Although I used to do it at work at the hospital, and I stopped because every time I did a group, at least one person quit because they did their future vision and said, I don't want to do this anymore, and they left, including my
Oh
own.
my gosh.
My own secretary said, I really want to be a stay-at-home mom. I'm leaving. So it was like,
Oh my God. Oh my God. Talk about a bit of a backfire. Well, my strength is in writing, excuse me, writing and communications. So, you know, I need to learn a lot more, you know, about this whole climate issue. And I'm really glad we're doing this, you know, and I'm really glad I'm attending.
I haven't done Zoom breakouts before. I love it.
It is interesting, especially when, when you can't talk with people in person, at least you have one person you can focus on. So, but no, I need to learn a lot more about climate. So I think we need to get out so we can